All right, welcome to week 2 of our series on getting ready for chartering and for us to come together as a leadership team. As you see, a miracle occurred, and I've either grown a lot or Wade shrunk a lot, but we are on similar heights. And today, we're going to be talking about the role of the Methodist Church and how that plays in. A lot of us, me included, come from a very different background. I come from a Baptist background where we were essentially independent contractors. I mean, just we were our own congregation, and that's the way it rolled, and we voted on things, and it was really that simple. Now, we're all part of this Methodist connectional kind of thing, and how does that work? I mean, are we a standalone church? Are we part of a bigger church? Just kind of from the United Methodist perspective, who are we?
Sure. The main difference between a Methodist church and maybe a Baptist church or non-denominational church is that a Baptist church and a non-denominational church are churches that call their pastors, and that's one of the main differences. So, just for a very base illustration, congregation gets upset with the pastor. That's usually how it happens. They get upset with the pastor, and the board of deacons or whoever that governing body meets with the pastor Sunday after church and says, "Thank you, but your services are no longer needed." Right. Well, then they go and they search for their own pastor. In the Methodist Church, we're part of an itinerant system. So that means that the church will, no matter how upset you get with me, and if y'all say we're tired of you and we don't want to hear any more of your sermons and no more of these videos and anything like that, the Methodist Church will always make sure that there's a pastor to pastor the church. So the congregation does not have to go out and look for its own pastor. The Methodist Church will do that because we're all connected with one another. And so we're not an independent contractor, so to speak. We are part of an overall religious body that we are accountable to, that also supports us to make sure that we are part of a bigger story, not just our own isolated individual story in that mission context.
What are some of the benefits? What are the positives of being part of that connectional church?
Well, being part of the Methodist Church, for example, it's not a heavy-handed relationship. For example, when this church was started because the United Methodist Church had a vision that there would be a church down in this area. Okay. And so as part of the United Methodist Church, I'm an ordained Methodist clergy, they put the call out, and that was something that Michelle and I had been praying about, and we said, that's what we feel called to do. So in talking with the Methodist Church, they said, we want you to go down here and do this after a time of prayer. And in asking them how they wanted us to do this, they said, all we want you to do is to make disciples of Jesus Christ. And I said, okay.
That was it.
And so it wasn't heavy-handed. They said, we want to support you. We understand that people need to know who Jesus is. We're not trying to make Methodists. We're trying to make Christians. And we understand it through a Methodist context, but we're not trying to save people into Methodism. We're trying to save people through Jesus Christ. Okay. And so when we came down here, because it wasn't a heavy-handed action, they were able to give us some latitude and freedom as to how we felt we need to do that in the mission context. Okay. Now, in some churches, in some denominations, they're very heavy-handed. I mean, here's the puppet master, there's the puppet, and they're doing this. That's not that way in the Methodist Church. Okay. Now, we have some set theology that we follow, but in how we live that out, it's quite different than if you went down the street to another Methodist church or down another Methodist church. We're a hybrid, so to speak, because most people who come into the church think of us as a non-denominational church.
Sure.
But the Methodist Church has given us freedom to do that.
Right.
And so that's kind of where that comes in.
Okay. Okay. Is there any I know that in the structure of what you have lovingly referred to as the mothership, there's some sort of organizational structure to that. And so can you kind of put those pieces? I know there's like a bishop, and then you have this guy that you call my boss. And who are all those people, and how do they fit together?
Right. Most people will never really think about this organizational structure, partly because the Methodist Church is not heavy-handed in it.
Right.
Now, I think about it because I'm part of that connectional system. Sure. But the way it's set up is that the Methodist Church, which has about 8 million people worldwide that's a part of it, the Methodist Church is broken up into different conferences, and those conferences are broken up basically along geographical lines. So we're part of the Central Texas Conference, which is based in Fort Worth. So it encompasses churches in Arlington and Fort Worth all the way out to Brownwood, and we're the very southern tip of the Central Texas Conference. So that conference is led by a bishop. Now, this isn't like a Catholic bishop. This is actually a person who has been a pastor, ordained Methodist pastor, and through the mechanisms of the United Methodist Church, it was recognized that there was a calling for him to be something more than just a local pastor, to be an overseer. And so he's over the Central Texas Conference, and so he is my ultimate boss.
Okay.
But under him, there's like middle management. I mean, if you want to,
yeah, sure, right, like an organization.
If you want to use business terms,
right.
And that middle manager is called a district superintendent.
Got it.
Up to this point, my district superintendent has been Gary Lindley, who has been the church growth and development person, the new church guy. But now that we're transitioning from being a new church start to being an official organized church, my district superintendent will be Rankin Cook, who is based out of Temple.
Oh, okay.
Now all that's, the non-sexy grunt work of behind-the-scenes mechanisms, but it's all part of this chain of command that we recognize that we're not just isolated people down here, but we're part of a bigger story, bigger connection, and that helps us continue this ministry of Jesus Christ.
All right, that's awesome. Now, you said one thing that I do want to make sure that we kind of understand, and you said as we move from this new church start into this chartered church or whatever, what does that look like? I mean, why do we want to be chartered? I mean, does that mean once we're chartered, does that mean we like start pushing in the organ and fitting our church for pipes and stuff? Is that how much do we have to change once we become chartered?
This Sunday, actually, the organ gets moved in, and I start wearing my black robe.
Perfect.
Yeah. No, it's the reason to be chartered is it's like a child that you raise, and in essence, the Methodist Church has kind of raised us, and we've had to rely on mom and dad a little bit, for guidance and for beginning this process. And they supported us financially at the beginning because it was just Michelle and I, and and they financially supported us. And as we've grown, their support has lessened as our support has increased. But it's almost like we're a teenager that's graduating high school, and we're going off to college. And so now we're learning what it means to be our own church. But we needed mom and dad to kind of nurture us and grow us. Sure. And so the point of chartering is that we realize that we're not a baby anymore. Now, most people who come to church at Rockbridge, they don't see us as a new church start. They don't see us as an unchartered church. They don't understand that terminology that the Methodist Church uses. We're a church.
Right.
We proclaim the gospel of Jesus Christ. We honor Him. We have baptisms. We have mission. We're doing all of that. But from an internal structure, especially the leadership that's watching this video, look, this is a maturing phase. And so as you mature, just like you go to college, you start taking on more responsibility. That means you might be able to grow and mature and do things that you wouldn't otherwise be able to do 4 years ago.
One of the things as I was thinking about the leadership team, I mean, it's not just me who has not been grown up in the Methodist Church, etc. About half of the team, I think, is fairly new to the United Methodist way. And one of the things we've always heard, I mean, as Baptists, we're like, those Methodists, the problem over there is the Methodist Church just come in and move that pastor. The congregation has no say over that. And so can you talk about that a little bit?
We are, as part of this connectional system, the bishop can appoint a pastor wherever he feels those gifts and graces need to be served best. So if the bishop thinks that my gifts and talents would be best used out in the middle of nowhere, West Texas, then technically I'm under his authority to go, and the church responds to that, and they work in consultation with the district superintendent to make sure there's a consultation process. Technically, that's the case. Okay. That's the case for every Methodist pastor. It doesn't matter if they're a huge Methodist church or a small Methodist church. We're under that authority. That's the strength of that connection. Sure. It can also be a downside of it, because the history has been in the Methodist Church where pastors, leave. The theory is, or the assumption is, they leave about every 2 or 3 years. So you have this constant turnover between pastors and congregation, and actually studies have shown that even though Baptists, for example, which is where you came from, Baptists, for example, call their own pastor, studies have shown that the turnover for Baptist pastors are about the same. Interesting. It's just that they're not part of a connection. They're isolated. Sometimes they get another job and sometimes not. So anyway, but with a new church pastor, and we're still considered a new church pastor, the dynamic's a little bit different because we understand that this is such a different dynamic than the church that's been around for 100 years. So the bishop and the leadership of the church understand that long term, with the Methodist Church overall, it's best for the pastor and for the congregation for longer pastorates. This summer we were on a mission trip to Arkansas, and we were with our bishop. He was at the mission site with us, and he shared information with me that I thought was very interesting. Studies have shown that the most effective years of ministry is year 11 between the pastor and the congregation. And so this is actually year 4 for the congregation. We've been here 5 years, but year 4 for the congregation. So we still have a little bit more time to go. Awesome. And they don't have an itchy trigger finger. They're not trying to just move people for the sake of moving. They want ministry to happen. They want lives to be changed. They want disciples to be made. And so that's why we as a church, we're focused on engaging the community to transform the community by being a deeply committed Christ-like community.
Fantastic. So there you have it, kind of how that relationship works and the joys and the benefits of being part of a United Methodist. Attach this video. There are some questions below. If you'll take some time to fill those out, and we'll make sure and get all the responses out to everybody before our next leadership meeting. Thanks for your time today. God bless.